All right, it is 6:57 a.m. Monday, the 2nd of October. Welcome to Rhythmically Caffeinated. I'm your host, Dan Bicknell. Hold up. What am I drinking, you ask? I am drinking a natural Ethiopian from my friends at Grey Roasting Company here in New Zealand, and it is stunning. Just a little plug for the bros. Welcome to this episode. Welcome to my drum cave. It's been a while. Lots has been happening. I'll fill you guys in on what's been happening. But first, a little bit of admin, a little bit of housekeeping. I want to give a shout out to SE Mics as always. I use their Dynacaster, which is their broadcast style mic, and Apogee hardware as well. So I use Apogee for all of my, just over here is my drum kit, for all my pre's on the kit. I use their Element 88s over here, and then I use their Duet 3 over here. So the Duet 3 is a little bit more mobile. I can take it on missions, and it's just a little bit more sort of discreet. So it's been a little while since I've seen you guys. Last time I saw you, I was finishing up the Black Comet tour, which was good. We went all over New Zealand, well, all over the North Island here in New Zealand, and it went really well. Did a bunch of shows. Good turnouts, great response, and just a really good time to sort of, hone our live performance. I always said that band was going to find itself on stage. All the musicians are killer. I'm really lucky to play with these guys, but I knew that it was going to be the sort of band that the more reps you get in live, obviously, the more the songs refine and whatnot. And then, I suppose the biggest news of the last few weeks is that Jess and I had our little boy. So we welcomed young Maximus into the world. And he is exactly 2 weeks and 1 day old. And so, it's just been all about, well, you may not know, but just when you have a newborn, it's just minimal sleep. He's feeding heaps, and he's a big boy. And, we're just sort of like doing that family thing at the moment, and it's really, really cool. All my jerseys, you might even see, have like a little bit of spew on every left shoulder. It's quite funny how that's almost like an endearing little thing, and it's going really well. I'm not too tired. I'm pretty good. I sort of train for this shit, like all my early mornings and whatnot. It's being a parent is amazing. I've got 3 kids. I've got a 19-year-old boy. He's about to move out soon. He's off on his way to uni. I've got an 11-year-old daughter. And then I've got another 0-old boy as well. 0-year-old? How would you say that? Well, 2-week-old. And it's kind of weird. Like, my son is 19, my oldest son. And my son is the age now that I was when I had him. And I've just had another one. And it's so bizarre. Like, because, man, that honestly just went like that. So to think that he's now the age that I was when I had him. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, fuck, man, you're not ready for a kid. And I certainly wasn't ready for a kid, but he was the best thing that ever happened to me. Anyway, I've been out of the studio for the last 2 weeks. I took a couple of weeks off. I only came back in maybe 3 days ago for the first time and just sort of recalibrated. I switched the kits over. So my blue kit, which is a 20-inch kick drum, I've been using that in the studio, a little bit live as well, but I tend to use that in the room more. But I've switched it out for my white kit, which is sort of like more of a vintage bombastic style drum kit. It's a 22 by 14 kick drum, which is a very sort of traditional vintage size, 10, 12, 14, 16. I've got a 13-inch tom for it as well. Amazing kit. And I've got 2 sessions this week that I thought that kit would be a little bit more suited for. So I've switched the kits over. I added some clear black dots to the toms, Remo clear black dots, which are just awesome heads, especially when you're doing that vintage thing. And an Emperor on the resonance side of my kick drum, and I ported it. Sounds effing amazing, which you guys will hear pretty soon anyway, and some of the demos that I'm going to show you. What I also did, and it's been on my mind for a little while, it's sort of been rattling away, is I've got this amazing KDrums bell bronze snare. So I love snares. I've got snares from A&F. I've got snares from Zebra Drums. I've got Everts Drums, which is an Australian company. I've got, what else have I got? There's some more up here. Oh yeah, I've got my KDrums, which is pretty much one of my favorite snares. This is the snare drum from the same builder that I get the kits from. So New Zealand Native Woods. This is a black Maori shell, which is an incredibly hard wood here in New Zealand. Apparently they used to use black Maori to make ball bearings. Before we started making ball bearings, we used black Maori in the place of what ball bearings became. That's how hard it is. So got this amazing snare that I tend to use. It's my live snare for sure, and then I use it in the studio a bit as well, and I'll do some more demos on that down the track. Got another VK here, which is an aluminium. I tend to use snares as like the way to sort of incorporate different color. I suppose it's kind of like a pedal board on a guitar. And I love having lots of gear and lots of snares and stuff. So yeah, so anyway, back to what I was saying. I've got this incredible bell bronze snare. So let me show you it. She's friggin' heavy, man. Like I think it weighs from memory 10 kilos, so 20 pounds-ish. And it's a 5mm shell. This is a cast shell, which means that with cast shells, it's not rolled and then welded together. It's cast into a sand cast, so they get molten bronze and they pour it into an already existing cast that's a cylinder cast, and they do it in a single pour. So you've got to pour the whole cast in a single pour so that there's no like if you did a part pour, stop, and then poured again, you'd create basically a break in the shell. It wouldn't ultimately it wouldn't affect the shell in terms of its build, but it does create inconsistencies in the bell side of it, the bell bronze side of it. And so they do a single cast pour, get this really thick cylinder out of it, and then they put that in the lathe and then lathe it down to what we have here, which is a 5mm shell. It's a 13x6, which is my favorite size for all my snare drums. And the thing with VK, it's a UK company, is that I sort of liken his snares, his offerings, like the more higher end of the market. They're kind of like the Rolls Royce of snare drums. You know, they're incredibly made. They're very stunning. He machines all of his lugs and whatnot, and the attention to detail. Like he makes his own throws, which is always an extra step for a lot of drum builders. Yeah, and they're just beautiful snares. And I've owned a few bell bronze before. So I've owned the Sonor Artist, which I don't think is cast from memory. The Sonor Artist is, I think that's a 14x6 too. I think that one is rolled. And there is a difference, because if you roll a shell and then you weld it, you've created an inconsistency in the shell. Honestly, I would never be able to hear the difference, let's be honest. Like, if you've got a weld in the shell and you're playing in a fucking rock band to, 15,000 people live, no one's sitting there going, oh man, that welded shell sounds like shit. But, if you're wanting to get into the nitty gritty, especially when you put these things under microphones, I mean, you could argue that it makes a difference. You definitely couldn't hear the difference if you had to A and B. I just do not think that you could hear the difference. But there are, purists out there who think that the cast shells are more pure than the rolled shells. Blah, blah, blah. So what I wanted to do today is take you guys through what I'm up to. So I've got 2 sessions this week. I'm recording an album for an Aussie band called the Bennies. I know the Bennies. I've toured with other bands in Australia on tours with the Bennies, so at festivals and whatnot. And a friend of mine plays in their band, and they've recently had a lineup change, and he asked if I could record the drums on their new album that they've been preparing for, and I'm like, yeah, man, that's cool. So I'm doing that this week, and then I'm also tracking some drums for Black Comet as well, because our album's coming out soon too. So busy. And in the back of my mind, I've been thinking about this snare again, because what I've done in the past, and I'll sort of kind of figure out where I got this from. I know it's not my idea, don't worry. But what I wanted to do is put a Kevlar head on this drum. So you probably have heard of Kevlar. Kevlar is used for things like armor. Kevlar is like a really, really durable synthetic fiber. And we use Kevlar in drumming for marching snares. So it's because it's really durable, it can go to a really high tension. So all of marching snares use Kevlar heads. So it's really common in drumming, but it's just not so common in kit playing. It's generally for marching snares because they can get a much higher tension and they need it for that rudimental stuff. And so I can't remember when I first heard of putting a Kevlar on a kit snare, but I know it's been a thing for a while. Like I know Thomas Hark's done it for years, and I've known of it as an idea of hearing it from somewhere for probably about 20 years now. And it's funny because like my friend Stevie and we did a podcast together called Pocket and Chops, and in one of the episodes, Stevie talks about how he was inspired by John Stanier from Helmet to get a Kevlar head for his snare, but he had a wooden snare. He had an A8 snare, and he got this Kevlar head. And the Kevlar heads don't have much give in them, so it doesn't take much to sort of get full crank out of them. You're not like with a Mylar head. You obviously, because there's so much give in them, it takes a long time to sort of crank it right up. In relation to a Kevlar head, but with a Kevlar head, it's literally like quarter turn, you're in the next tension range. Quarter turn, you're in sort of like medium to high, and then like maybe 1.5 full turns, and it's almost at full tension. And so it doesn't take much. So because you can gain those tensions a lot quicker, you can also take the tuning way further. And if your snare is not robust enough to handle it, it can fuck them up basically, which is what Stevie was talking about in this episode. He got a Kevlar head because he heard about it, put it on his A8 snare, cranked it up because like similar to me, he was like really into that real high tune snare thing from back in the day, which I kind of still am really. And he actually popped the lug off, and he went back into the store. I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but he went back into the store trying to claim that I think he tried to get like a fucking refund or something, and they just kind of laughed at him. But yeah, it's a funny part of the podcast because I've heard of that happening, a bunch of times, like popping lugs off, even with general heads. So with the Kevlar heads, this guy here, you can definitely do it way easier. So first and foremost, like you don't want to put these on any wooden snares unless it's like a crazy thick snare, like your Pearl Reference snare, or the Sonar Earth snare that could handle it. This snare might even be able to handle it because it's a stave shell, so it's very thick as well. But honestly, like I don't really see the point in putting it on a wooden snare. You only really want to put it on a thick shell metal snare, in my opinion. And so, yeah, that's what I did. And back in the day, like the Bell Bronze snares that I had, I would, dabble with putting Kevlar heads on. And so it's like, why? Why would I do that? Well, they last forever. Like these things, especially on a kit snare, because you don't play it as aggressively as a marching snare with the thicker sticks and whatnot. They just last forever. And they've got this wet sound about them that I really like. It must be the finish on them. So I suppose first and foremost, let's just establish, like what head it is. Let's sort of just quickly get the definition of Kevlar as well, just so we're sort of on the same page. Just so I'm not just sort of speaking rubbish. So first, let's type in, what is Kevlar? Kevlar is a strong, heat-resistant synthetic fiber related to other aramids such as Nomex and Technora. Developed by Stephanie Kwolek at DuPont in 1965, the high-strength material was used commercially in the early 1970s as a replacement for steel in racing tires. Yeah, I mean, this shit is full on, man. So, well, how am I using it and what am I using? Well, I'm a Remo endorsee, and I've been using their version of the Kevlar head for years. This one in particular I haven't used before, so it's kind of cool. It's called the Black Max. You can even see there, if you can see that pattern, like it's a weave. It's a material essentially, super thick, and yeah, it just goes really well with something like a Bell Bronze snare because of the tension that you can gain on it, and these can handle it. They can take the beating. This isn't a tuning episode, but I did want to touch on the resonant head because most people get the bottom head wrong on snares, which is where all their problems are coming from. So I thought at the very least, since I'm going to this trouble of talking about the Kevlar head, I could sort of start fresh on the bottom too and just do a quick thing. So what I'm going to do is I'll tell you first, I'm going to use, which is what I always use, I'm going to use an ambassador snare side for the resonant side. And then I'm going to set these up. I'm just going to put them on loosely. We can cut this part out, but I'm going to seat them and then come back over here. And then we can just kind of talk about how I tune and whatnot. So let's do that. If anyone asks me about tuning, generally I find that where people are going wrong is the bottom head. I always start with the bottom head, and I never really touch it. Once I've got it where I want it, I never touch it. I may like go for ultra low snare sound, like by detuning the top head, or go ultra cranked as well, because I do like both. I like everything. I never touch the bottom head. So let's just sort of establish where that should be straight off the bat. So for me, it's like a feel thing initially, where I'm just sort of like, I don't want it to be choked, but I want it to be really up there in terms of its range, because the sensitivity in the snare sensitivity comes from this side. So I'm trying to get this like ultra responsive essentially. So I'm just looking for that same tension across the board. Yes. 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 Yeah, I mean, that all feels pretty good. Yep. You can hear you can hear it taking shape. I used to think it was the glue cracking, but I said that in a video once, and Remo actually came back to me and said that it's not the glue cracking, it's the head shaping to the bearing edge. So the mylar folding around the bearing edge. I don't know. They were pretty defensive about it. I love Remo. All right. So then, yeah, obviously this is something you can do as well, because what I want to do now is actually kind of tune it too. So like, honestly, I'm not getting too anal about this because you're not going to really hear it under the bashing of it all, but I do want them to sort of be relatively in the same zone. So a little trick, just put your stick underneath, and now you can. So I can hear that these two are a little bit lower. So like I say, I'm just kind of looking for, Jesus. Cool. To me, honestly, that's enough, man. Like, I was going for that feel thing, so getting it near the point of like too far, but not quite there, and then just relatively in the same zone. And to me, that's fine. Yep, that looks looking good. So, Jesus. What I want to show you guys now is basically 4 tunings of it. Just really out of interest sake. Like, it kind of more to show the range of like how good these heads can sound on the right snare drum. Because it's just a little bit sort of unorthodox to use one, I suppose. So, what I'm going to do is, firstly, I'm going to do a jam on the kit. I'll play the same groove. There may be different intros and outros, but I'll lock in the same groove, and then I'll establish 4 different tunings with that groove as well, one after another, through the magic of television. So the first tuning, what I'm going to do is, this is how low it's going to be. Like, they are not even grabbing, man, because I want you to see how good a head can sound, even when the tension rods aren't even friggin' touching. Friggin'. Cool. I mean, boom. So, let's head over here, and then I'll do a jam with the ultra low tuning, okay? All right. Now, let's take it up. I'm going to go like essentially like a half turn. Now, what happens when you're doing this as well is that each lug that you do, each lug that you tighten, each tension rod that you tighten, it's going to loosen off the other one. So you kind of have to catch that other tension rod back up. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. Haven't gone that far. So let's go over and do our low to medium jam. Doodly-doo, 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 doodly-doo. All right, it sounds really good. It's like already showing you that for a high tension snare, it sounds friggin' good, low as well. So let's now take it up more. So now I'm going like a half turn each. That's all I need, unless I have to catch a tension rod up to, to the other ones, which I'd mentioned before. So I have to catch this one up, but now I'm going to do the half. All right, we're getting there now. So this is what I'll call medium to high tuning. So let's head over here and have a jam on that. All right, we're back. Now, got to catch that one up again. Yep. Let's go. Woo. Let's go to ultra high now, which I love. I mean, these heads and these snares just sound fantastic ultra high. So let's head over there and have a jam on that. All right, there we have it. 4 tunings, low, medium high, and then high. And honestly, in my opinion, they all sound fantastic. So I'm going to be using this snare in a couple of different variations this week. I'll use it for low and thuddy for a couple of tracks, but then I'll crank it up and use it for cranked as well. I'm going to be using my KDrums, and I'm probably going to use the aluminium as well. Because, like when you record an album or when you're doing multiple songs, it's nice to have variation. Snares offer so much color in a track. The point of today's episode was to show you guys the Black Max, Remo's Kevlar head, the history of the Kevlar head, that, it's been used for years on bell bronze snares, essentially, is where I've seen it the most. And it's just something different. Don't put it on a wooden snare, because I don't want to get messages about how you popped a lug off it and it's my fault. So if you've got a bell bronze snare or a really thick wooden snare, like ultra thick, but you do it at your own risk, okay? So I know how far I can take these things. But yeah, it's a rad snare head. This is a rad snare. Everything is rad. and laters, y'all.